3 hours after my wife's funeral, my son found a cream-colored paper in her desk drawer. His face went pale. "Just an old bank statement. This is worthless," he said, then threw it in the trash. But I saw his hands trembling, which compelled me to retrieve the paper. The next day, I took that paper to the bank. The manager looked at the paper, looked at me and said, "You need to call the police immediately." That single piece of paper exposed 8 years of lies and proved my wife had been protecting me until her very last breath. Thank you for being here with me. Before we continue, take a moment to comment and tell me where you're watching from. And one more thing, if you found a paper your own family called worthless, would you have ignored it or looked closer? Share your instinct below. Please note, this story includes some dramatized elements for educational and storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real people or settings is coincidental, but the message may still resonate. My son tossed the most significant document in my late wife's apartment into the trash at exactly 2:30 on a Saturday afternoon, 3 hours after we laid her to rest, and for a few minutes, I nearly let it disappear forever. The funeral itself had been modest. 23 people gathered at East Lawn Memorial Park, counting the minister and 2 cemetery workers who stood apart out of courtesy. Emily had outlived nearly all her friends, and those still alive were too frail to travel across Sacramento. Philip stood beside me, the entire service, his expression dry and distant, checking his phone twice during the eulogy. I told myself grief showed itself in different ways. Afterward, we returned to the apartment Emily and I had lived in for 32 years on 21st and Capitol, right in Midtown Sacramento. Cardboard boxes filled every corner. Black trash bags leaned against the walls. A lifetime was being dismantled piece by piece, reduced to decisions about donations and discards. I'm 70 years old, a retired high school history teacher, a widower for 6 days. Emily was 67 when pancreatic cancer took her stage 3, diagnosed 14 months earlier. Doctors had pushed for aggressive treatment, chemotherapy, radiation surgery. Emily refused. I believe she was simply exhausted, ready to rest. I didn't know the real reason then. I didn't know anything at all. For 34 years, Emily worked as a librarian at John Sutter Elementary. She taught children how to love stories, how to question what they read, how to think beyond the page. I loved her for 49 years and was married to her for 46. I thought I knew every part of her, the way she hummed while cooking, her habit of arranging books by color instead of author, the thin scar on her left hand from a kitchen accident in 1979. I was wrong. Philip is 40 now, built like me but heavier weight that comes from business lunches and long hours behind the wheel. He lives in El Dorado Hills with his wife Amanda and their 8-year-old daughter Lily. His job title shifted every time. I asked pharmaceutical sales, then medical devices, then something vague involving healthcare logistics. Emily used to joke that he was climbing so fast he never stopped to see where he was stepping. In Emily's final year, Philip visited her 3 times. 3 visits in 12 months, none longer than an hour. That afternoon, he was sorting through Emily's desk when he found the pile. Mostly old bills, outdated PG and E-Statements credit card, offers a warranty card for a toaster we'd already thrown away. The desk had 5 drawers, and Emily had saved everything. "This is all junk, Dad," he said, flipping through the stack. Too fast. I noticed later how rushed he seemed, like he was searching for something. "We can throw it out." Then a single sheet slipped free, cream-colored, thicker than the rest. It slid toward the floor, and Philip grabbed it before it landed. I saw his face change, just for a second. His jaw tightened. His fingers crushed the paper slightly. His eyes widened, then narrowed, then went blank. "What is that?" I asked. "Nothing," he said immediately, already moving toward the kitchen. "Just an old bank statement. Expired." "Let me see it." "Dad, it's nothing. That account's probably closed. Mom kept everything, you know that." He was at the trash can now, the white bin beside the refrigerator. "We've got real issues to deal with. The lease ends in 60 days. Her medical bills, probate paperwork. Philip." The paper dropped into the trash, landing on coffee grounds and a torn envelope. "Trust me," he said, "it's worthless." 10 minutes later, his phone rang. He stepped into the hallway, voice lowered, words indistinct. When he returned, he was already pulling on his jacket, the expensive charcoal one Amanda had bought him for Christmas. "Amanda needs me back," he said. "Lily has something at school Monday, a presentation. I need to help her get ready." It was Saturday. Monday was 2 days away. "You're leaving already. We haven't even touched the bedroom. I'll come back next weekend, I promise." He was already at the door, keys in hand, Just don't throw anything important away without checking with me, okay? Some of Mom's things might be worth something. Antiques, jewelry. We should go through it together." Then he was gone. His footsteps echoed down the stairwell. The hum of his Tesla started below and faded down Capitol Avenue, leaving the apartment silent. I stayed there for hours. Light from the windows stretched across the room, turning from gold to orange, then purple, then dark blue. I didn't turn on a lamp. I sat on the couch we'd bought at a yard sale in 1991, surrounded by boxes and trash bags, and the remains of a life I thought I understood. Something about Philip's behavior wouldn't leave me alone. The speed, the certainty, and that brief flash on his face when the paper fell the moment before he masked it with calm. I'd seen that expression before, when he was 16 and snuck back into the house at 3 a.m, when he was 22 and Emily asked about $500 missing from her purse. Nothing he'd said, worthless, but his hands had always trembled. At 8 that evening, I finally stood up, turned on the kitchen light, walked to the trash can. The paper was still there, resting on top one corner, creased from where Philip had gripped it too hard. I lifted it out and flattened it beneath the fluorescent light. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a Wells Fargo certificate of deposit dated April 12th, 2017. The account number printed neatly across the top. The balance listed below $3,245,670. Over $3 million. My hands went numb. I read it again, then again. The numbers didn't change. Beneath the account number, a yellow post-it note was attached, written in Emily's careful handwriting. "Gregory, they don't know about this one. Take it to Russell Jennings at Wells Fargo Midtown. Trust no one in the family. I love you. A-Job." Trust no one in the family. Not be cautious, not ask questions. Trust no one. Including, though, I hadn't wanted to admit it, our son. I read Emily's note 17 times before I understood what she was really saying. Trust no one in the family. Not be careful. Not ask questions. Trust no one, including our son. 2 a.m, I sat at the kitchen table with the certificate spread out in front of me, that yellow post-it note glowing under the overhead light like a tiny flag of warning. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old pipes settling. Outside Capitol Avenue was empty. Even the bars had closed an hour ago. The certificate said, April 12th, 2017. 8 years ago. 8 years Emily had kept this secret, and she'd never mentioned it. Not once. Not during dinner conversations about money, not when we'd argued about whether we could afford to replace the water heater. Not during those long nights in her final months, when pain kept her awake, and we'd talk about everything and nothing just to pass the hours. $3,245,670. I kept reading the number like it might change if I looked away and looked back, but it stayed the same. More money than I'd earned in my entire career teaching American history to teenagers who'd rather be anywhere else. My mind kept circling back to 2017. That was the year Emily started forgetting things. Small things at first, where she'd left her car keys, whether she'd already taken her morning vitamins, the name of the neighbor in 3B who'd lived there for a decade. I'd been worried. Had made her an appointment with Dr. Dixon, our family physician. He'd run tests, asked questions, looked concerned in that professional way doctors have when they're preparing you for bad news. Early signs of cognitive decline, he'd said. Not unusual for her age. We'll monitor it. But now I wondered, had Emily really been forgetting, or had she been pretending? 2017 was also the year Philip moved back to California from Nevada. He'd been living in Las Vegas working for some medical supply company that went under, or that's what he'd told us. He'd shown up at our door in June with 2 suitcases and a story about wanting to be closer to family, about Amanda being pregnant with Lily, about wanting his daughter to grow up near her grandparents. "I want to help take care of you guys," he'd said. "You're not getting any younger." I was 63. Emily was 64. We weren't exactly decrepit, but Philip had insisted. Moved into an apartment in El Dorado Hills, close enough to visit regularly. At first, he had visited regularly twice a week, sometimes more. He'd take Emily to doctor's appointments, help her with grocery shopping, sit with her while I was still teaching those last few years before retirement. We'd been grateful. What parent wouldn't be your son wanting to take care of you? Now that gratitude tasted like ash in my mouth. Emily had refused cancer treatment. That was 2024, just this past January, when Dr. Dixon had delivered the diagnosis. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer, operable possibly, but the surgery was risky. Chemotherapy would be brutal. The whole course of treatment would cost somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000, even with Medicare. "I'm not doing it," Emily had said. We were sitting in Dr. Dixon's office, the walls covered with diplomas and those motivational posters about perseverance. "I'm 67 years old, Gregory. I've had a good life. I'm not spending our last savings on maybe buying myself 6 more months of misery," I'd argued. God, I'd argued. But Emily was stubborn when she made up her mind, and eventually I'd stopped fighting. I thought she was just tired, ready to accept the inevitable, but she'd had $3 million hidden away. $3 million that could have paid for treatment 10 times over, and she'd chosen to die instead. Why, the answer was in my hand, that post-it note in Emily's careful script. "Take this to Russell Jennings at Wells Fargo Midtown. Trust no one in the family." She'd been protecting something, or protecting someone, or maybe just protecting the truth, making sure it survived even if she didn't. The certificate felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should feel. This wasn't just money. This was evidence of what I didn't know yet. But Emily had hidden it, had left me instructions, had warned me not to trust family, not trust Philip, my son who'd thrown this certificate in the trash without a second thought. Or maybe with every thought. Maybe that's why his hands had been shaking. I looked at the clock, 2:43 in the morning. The bank wouldn't open for almost 7 hours. Monday morning, I'd take this to Wells Fargo Midtown. I'd find Russell Jennings, whoever he was, and I'd start getting answers to questions I hadn't even known I needed to ask. But first, I needed to hide it. Philip had found it once in Emily's desk. If he came back when he came back, he'd look for it. I was certain of that now. The way he'd rushed off, the way he'd told me not to throw anything away without checking with him first. He was planning to come back and search more thoroughly. I stood up, certificate in hand, and looked around the apartment. Where do you hide something this important, this dangerous? Then I saw it. Emily's bookshelf. The one organized by color blue spines, bleeding into green, bleeding into yellow. She had hundreds of books accumulated over decades of being a librarian. And there on the third shelf, wedged between 2 thick encyclopedias, was a worn copy of Moby Dick that we'd owned since 1976. I pulled it down. The pages were yellowed, the binding cracked. Emily had read it twice, made notes in the margins in pencil. I opened it to the middle, where the pages were thickest, and carefully slid the certificate between pages 400 and 401, right in the middle of Ahab's final confrontation with the whale. Ironic, maybe. A story about obsession and revenge, about a man who destroyed himself chasing something he couldn't let go. I put the book back on the shelf, stepped back. It looked completely ordinary, just another old novel in a collection of old novels. Philip wouldn't look there. Why would he? Philip had never been much of a reader. I was about to turn off the kitchen light and try to sleep when I heard it. Footsteps on the exterior stairwell, heavy, deliberate. Coming up to the second floor, I glanced at the clock. 2:58 in the morning. The footsteps stopped outside my door. Sunday morning light was streaming through my kitchen window when the doorbell rang. Philip stood in the hallway, Amanda beside him, and I knew immediately they'd come for the paper I'd pulled from the trash. I hadn't slept. The doorbell at 3 in the morning had turned out to be my neighbor with car trouble, but after that, I'd spent the rest of the night watching the bookshelf where I'd hidden the certificate. By the time real morning came, I'd drunk 4 cups of coffee and felt like my nerves were made of live wire. Now, here was Philip, 12 hours earlier than he'd promised. "Hey, Dad." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thought I'd come back and help you finish up Mom's stuff. Didn't feel right leaving you to do it alone." Amanda stood beside him, only the second time I'd seen her up close since the funeral. 37, 10 years younger than Philip, with carefully maintained appearance that spoke of regular salon visits. Designer jeans, expensive leather jacket, a handbag that probably cost more than my monthly pension. "Gregory," she said, touching my arm, "we're so sorry about Emily." I stepped back to let them in, watching Philip's eyes sweep the apartment. The trash can first, then the kitchen counter, then the desk. Did you take the trash out yet?" Philip asked. "I forgot to do it yesterday." There it was. My heart kicked against my ribs. "Yeah. Building maintenance came by around 7 this morning." A lie. The building didn't have Sunday collection, but Philip wouldn't know that. I watched him process this. Watched the brief flash of panic cross his face before he glanced at Amanda. Something passed between them. Some silent communication that made my skin crawl. "Oh, good." Philip closed a desk drawer he'd opened. "Less to worry about." Amanda stepped forward, smile brightening. Gregory Philip mentioned there might be old bank documents we should look at. For probate. I'll handle probate with Emily's attorney, I said. You have an attorney? Philip asked too quickly. Since when? Since 1992. Clarence Pemberton, Old Sacramento. The name made Philip's jaw tighten. What followed were 2 of the longest hours of my life. Philip and Amanda went through the apartment with thoroughness that would have been touching if I didn't know what they were really doing. They checked closets, empty drawers, sorted through boxes. Always casual, always under the guise of helping. Amanda took the bedroom. I heard her opening nightstands, the dresser, even trying combinations on the small safe where we kept important documents. Philip focused on the living room and kitchen. He went through the desk 3 more times, each search more frustrated. At one point, he stood in front of Emily's bookshelf where I'd hidden the certificate, and my breath stopped completely. Mom had a lot of books, he said, reaching for a thick blue volume. She was a librarian for 34 years, I replied. What did you expect? He pulled out an encyclopedia about birds, flipped through it, found nothing, shoved it back. Not Moby Dick. Thank God. Where's Lily? I asked. With a babysitter, Amanda said, emerging from the bedroom. We didn't think it was appropriate to bring her. All this sorting through a dead grandmother's things. Dead grandmother, not her grandmother or Emily. Already forgotten, already reduced to a category. I'd like to see her sometime, I said. Sure, Philip said vaguely. We'll set something up. They left at 2 in the afternoon, empty-handed and visibly tense. I walked them to the door, accepted Amanda's air kiss, watched them descend the stairs. Then I went to the window. From the 2nd floor, I had a clear view of the parking lot. Philip and Amanda reached his Tesla, but didn't get in. They stood beside it, and even from this distance I could see the argument building. Amanda's hands moved sharply, punctuating words I couldn't hear. She pointed back at the buildings, face tight with anger. Philip shook his head, hands spread in helplessness. Amanda grabbed his arm, pulled him close, said something that made his whole body go rigid. He pulled away, ran hands through his hair, looked up at the building like he was calculating something. For a second, I thought he was looking directly at my window, and I stepped back. Finally, they got in the car. But they sat there for another 5 minutes, Amanda talking, Philip listening with his head bowed. Then the Tesla's motor engaged and they pulled away. I stayed at the window long after they had disappeared down Capitol Avenue. My hands were shaking. They were desperate. That much was clear. Desperate enough to come back less than 24 hours after leaving. Desperate enough to search my home under the pretense of helping. Desperate enough to argue about it in public. They were looking for something specific. The certificate. They knew it existed. They needed it gone, which meant Emily had been right. Trust no one in the family. I walked to the bookshelf, pulled out Moby Dick. The certificate was still there, pressed between pages 400 and 401, safe and waiting. Tomorrow morning, I'd take it to Wells Fargo Midtown. I'd find Russell Jennings, and I'd start learning the truth my wife had died protecting. But first, I needed to understand why Philip was so desperate, why Amanda had come with him, why they'd searched with such methodical intensity. The answer sat in my hand. $3,245,670. Money Emily had hidden for 8 years. Money she'd never told me about, even when we'd argued about affording her cancer treatment. She'd let herself die rather than touch this money, rather than let Philip know it existed. What had my son done to make his own mother that afraid? Russell Jennings's face went through 3 distinct expressions when I handed him the certificate of deposit recognition, concern, and something that looked uncomfortably close to relief. I'd arrived at Wells Fargo Midtown at 9 o'clock sharp Monday morning, waiting in my car across the street until I saw the lights flip on inside. The bank sat on the corner of 21st and J Street, a newer building with too much glass and not enough character, the kind of place that could have been anywhere in America. I'd walked past it 1,000 times in 32 years and never once gone inside. Emily had handled our banking. Now I understood why. The lobby was empty except for one teller counting cash at her station and a security guard who nodded at me as I entered. I approached the teller, her name tag said Sandra, and asked to speak with Russell Jennings. Do you have an appointment? No, but tell him it's about Emily Ashford. He'll want to see me. Something flickered across Sandra's face. She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then gestured toward a hallway. Second door on the right. Russell Jennings was 52 years old, I'd later learn, with silver haircut, military short, and the kind of posture that suggested he'd spent time in uniform before banking. He stood when I entered his office, hand extended, and I saw him clock the certificate in my other hand before his eyes even met mine. "Mr. Ashford," he said, "I've been expecting someone. I wasn't sure if your wife had told anyone." He closed the door behind me, locked it, pulled the blinds on the interior window that looked out onto the lobby. The whole sequence took maybe 10 seconds, and by the end of it, my heart was hammering. "You know about this," I said, not a question. "I do." Russell gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit down. This is going to take a while." I sat, handed him the certificate, watched his hand steady as he examined it, fingers tracing the account number like he'd memorized it years ago. "April 12th, 2017, he said quietly. "Your wife came in on a Wednesday afternoon. She had 2 cashier's checks total of $2 million. Said she wanted to open a certificate of deposit, highest interest rate, available longest term we offered. She was very specific about the instructions." "What instructions?" Russell looked up at me. "That no one but her could access it. That if anyone tried anyone, including family, we were to deny the request and notify her immediately. She gave me her personal cell phone number, made me promise I'd call her directly, not the home number." The home number Philip would have answered. The landline Emily had insisted we keep, even though I'd wanted to cancel it years ago. "She knew," I said. "She knew someone would try to steal it." Russell pulled up records on his computer fingers, moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "Your wife came back 4 more times between 2017 and 2023. Each time she'd verify the account was still secure, update her contact information, make sure nothing had been compromised. The last time I saw her was August of 23. She looked..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "She looked ill, thinner, but her mind was sharp as ever. August 2023, 5 months before her cancer diagnosis, or 5 months before she'd told me about it." "Where did she get $2 million? I asked. "Property sales. She liquidated 2 investment properties, a rental duplex she'd inherited from her mother back in 1998, and a small commercial building in Folsom she'd purchased during the .com era. Both sales went through quietly. She handled everything through a real estate attorney in Roseville, kept the transactions completely separate from your joint accounts. Properties I'd forgotten existed. The duplex had been in Emily's mother's name so long it had faded from memory. The Folsom building I'd thought she'd sold years ago. The initial deposit was $2 million, Russell continued. With compound interest over 8 years at our highest CD rate, the current value is $3,245,670. As of this morning, the number hit me again even though I'd already seen it. $3.2 million. More money than I'd thought Emily and I had accumulated in our entire lives combined. "Mr. Ashford, there's something else you need to know." Russell's voice dropped lower. "In March of 2020, someone tried to access this account. 3 separate attempts over a 2-week period." He clicked through screens, pulling up scanned documents. March 9th, 14th, and 20th. Each time they submitted power of attorney paperwork, claiming your wife was mentally incapacitated and unable to manage her own affairs. The documents were professionally done, notarized, properly formatted, but our document verification specialist flagged them. Why? The signatures were wrong. Not obviously forged, but wrong. The pressure was too consistent, suggesting someone had traced rather than signed naturally. The pen type didn't match what your wife typically used. And when we called the notary whose seal appeared on the documents, he had no record of notarizing anything for Emily Ashford. Russell turned his monitor toward me. 3 identical forms filled the screen, each bearing Emily's name, each claiming she needed someone else to manage her finances. Each with a signature that looked like hers, but wasn't. Who submitted them? I asked, though I already knew. My hands were cold. Russell clicked another button. A name appeared at the top of the first form, listed as the designated agent with power of attorney. Philip Ashford, my son's name. His address in El Dorado Hills, his phone number, his signature at the bottom, swearing under penalty of perjury that the information was true and correct. The first attempt was denied immediately, Russell said. Your wife had warned us this might happen. When we rejected it, the same person tried 2 more times with slightly different paperwork, probably hoping a different teller wouldn't notice. But we'd flagged the account. Every attempt was documented, reported to our fraud prevention team. Did you call Emily? Every time. She thanked me, said she was handling it. Asked me not to involve law enforcement yet. Russell looked uncomfortable. In hindsight, I should have pushed harder, but she was adamant, said she needed to gather more evidence first, that moving too quickly would compromise something larger she was working on. The office felt smaller suddenly, the walls too close. I could hear my own breathing harsh and uneven. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Why didn't Emily tell me?" "I don't know why she didn't tell you, Mr. Ashford, but she made me promise not to contact you unless something happened to her. She said if she died and someone came asking about the CD, I should tell them everything." He pulled a sealed envelope from his desk drawer, my name written on the front in Emily's handwriting. "She left this for you, said to give it to you if you ever came here." I stared at the envelope. Couldn't make myself reach for it yet. "Mr. Ashford," Russell said quietly, "I think we need to call the police. What your son attempted 3 times, that's felony forgery, elder financial abuse. The fact that your wife hid $2 million and then died without using it for her cancer treatment." He stopped, started again. "I think there's more to this than attempted access to a bank account." I finally looked away from the envelope, looked at the screen showing Philip's signature on those forged documents. My son swearing under oath that his mother couldn't manage her own affairs, trying 3 times to steal from her. "Yes," I said, "call the police." Russell's fingers moved across his keyboard, pulling up records that would change everything I thought I knew about the last 5 years of my wife's life. "Your son is still in the lobby," Russell said, voice low. "Sandra's keeping him occupied with paperwork. We have maybe 10 minutes before he gets suspicious." As he turned his monitor toward me, and I saw rows of data I didn't understand at first. Dates, dollar amounts, account numbers swimming across the screen. "The 3 power of attorney attempts in March 2020 weren't random," Russell said. "They were calculated. Look at the dates, March 9th, 14th, 20th. Each attempt came after the previous one was rejected. Each used slightly different language, different notary stamps. Someone was refining their approach." "Professionally done," I said, remembering his earlier words. "Exactly. The signatures were forged, but by someone with skill. Our document verification specialist flagged them because the pen pressure was too consistent. Someone had traced rather than signed naturally. And the notary seals, while authentic looking, came from notaries who had no record of ever meeting Emily Ashford." Russell clicked through scanned images of the forms. My son's name at the top of each one, swearing my wife was mentally incapacitated. "But here's what I want you to understand, Mr. Ashford. Your wife opened this certificate of deposit in April 2017. The first theft attempt was March 2020. That's 7 months shy of 3 years. She knew someone would come for this money. She was waiting for it." The timeline felt important, though. I couldn't say why yet. Russell opened another file. "After we denied the power of attorney attempts, I personally reviewed all accounts associated with your family name. I found 4 other accounts in your wife's name. Joint accounts with your son listed as co-signer. Since when? Since 2016. Your wife added him to the accounts that year. According to the notes, she told our staff it was for convenience in case she needed help managing finances as she got older. 2016. 1 year before, she'd opened the secret certificate. 1 year before, she'd started forgetting things. These 4 accounts," Russell continued pulling up spreadsheets, "show a pattern of systematic withdrawals over 8 years. Small enough amounts that they wouldn't trigger automatic fraud alerts, but consistent. Look." The spreadsheet filled with red highlighted rows. 20,000 here, 35,000 there, 15,000, 22,000. Each withdrawal spaced 2 to 3 months apart, stretching from January 2016 through January 2024. "Every single withdrawal was made by your son," Russell said. "ATM cash advances transfers to external accounts, checks made out to cash. Over 8 years, the total comes to $1,850,000. The number hit me like a physical thing, nearly $2 million. Stolen from his own mother across 8 years, while I'd thought we were scraping by on teacher pensions." "The withdrawals stopped in January this year," Russell said quietly. 2 months before your wife died. You know why?" I shook my head, though some part of me already knew. "Because the accounts were empty. He'd drained them completely." I stared at the screen, at the final balance lines showing 0, 0, 0, 0. "Your wife came here 4 times between 2020 and 2023, Russell said. "Each time she requested printed statements of all her accounts. She told me it was for tax purposes. I think now she was building a case, documenting everything. He pulled paper files from a drawer, bank statements going back years, each one marked with Emily's initials in the corner. She knew, I said. She knew he was stealing, and she documented it. More than that, Russell's expression was grim. She planned for it. The certificate of deposit, the separate properties she sold, the warnings she gave me, your wife spent years preparing for something. For this moment, maybe. For you, sitting here learning the truth. My throat felt tight. Why didn't she just turn him in? Why let him steal for 8 years? I don't know, Mr. Ashford, but I think... Russell hesitated. I think she wanted to make sure the evidence was ironclad. That when the truth came out, there'd be no way for him to talk his way out of it. No way for anyone to doubt what he'd done. The phone on Russell's desk rang. He glanced at it, then at me. That'll be Sandra, probably saying your son is getting impatient. He picked up. Jennings? Listened. His face changed. A pause. Don't let him leave the building, and tell Mr. Ashford's son I'll be with him shortly. He hung up slowly, looking at me with an expression between surprise and something like vindication. Mr. Ashford, you said we should call the police. Yes. We don't need to. Russell stood moving to his office door and opening it slightly. I saw him gesture down the hallway. Detective George Campbell, Sacramento Financial Crimes Division. Someone reported suspicious activity on this account 2 hours ago at 7 this morning, before the bank even opened. An official complaint filed with instructions to investigate immediately. A man appeared in the doorway, late 40s, built solid with the kind of eyes that missed nothing. He showed me a badge. Mr. Ashford, he said. I'm Detective Campbell. I've been waiting for you to show up. My mind reeled. Someone reported this 2 hours ago, who, Russell and the detective exchanged a look. Your wife, Campbell said. Emily Ashford filed a predated complaint with my division in August 2023. Detailed documentation of financial theft, forged power of attorney attempts, systematic asset drainage. She gave us everything: bank statements, forged documents, timeline of events. But she included specific instructions. What instructions? That we were not to act until after her death. That we were to wait for her husband, you, to discover the certificate of deposit and bring it to Russell Jennings. Only then were we to open a formal investigation. Thus, Campbell's voice was measured professional. Your wife predicted every step of this, Mr. Ashford, including the fact that you're here right now. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Emily had known, had planned, had filed a police report 8 months before she died, with instructions that it remain sealed until I found the truth myself. And your son, Campbell, continued, and is currently in the lobby asking questions about this very account, which means we need to move quickly. Before I share what happened during the confrontation at Wells Fargo and the shocking recording Emily left behind that changed everything, I want to hear from you. Comment below and answer honestly. Could you ever forgive a family member who stole your life savings? I need to know you're walking through this with me. Also, fair warning, what comes next blends real financial crime patterns with dramatized elements for impact. If you prefer purely factual content, this might be a good place to pause. Detective George Campbell was 48 years old, built like someone who'd played college football and never quite stopped training. And he looked at me with the kind of steady compassion that made me understand immediately that this was going to get worse before it got better. We'd moved to a conference room at the back of the bank, away from the lobby where Philip was still waiting. Campbell had brought a briefcase, Russell had brought Emily's files, and I sat between them, feeling like the world had tilted sideways and wouldn't right itself again. Mr. Ashford Campbell began. I've been with Sacramento Financial Crimes Division for 18 years. I've investigated elder abuse cases that would turn your stomach. But your wife's case? He paused, choosing words. Your wife was the most thorough victim I've ever encountered. She documented everything. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick accordion folder, Emily's name written on the tab in black marker. She contacted me August 15, 2023, 6 months before she died. Walked into my office without an appointment, sat down and said, I'm being robbed by my son and I'm dying of cancer. I need you to wait until I'm dead to do anything about it. The image of Emily walking into a police station sick and determined made my throat close up. She gave me this. Campbell tapped the folder. 8 years of bank statements, copies of the forged power of attorney documents, a timeline of every theft, every lie, every manipulation. She'd been collecting evidence since 2017. Why didn't she just turn him in then? I asked. Why wait? Why let him keep stealing? Campbell's expression was grim. She told me she needed ironclad proof, that Philip would lie, would claim she'd given him permission, would say she was confused because of dementia. She said people believe sons over mothers, especially when the mother is old and sick. So she spent years building a case that couldn't be denied. He pulled out a document, a formal complaint, typed and notarized Emily's signature at the bottom. She filed this with my division last August, but she included specific instructions: do not act until after my death. Do not contact my husband until he discovers the certificate of deposit. Wait for him to bring it to Russell Jennings. Only then open the investigation. She knew I'd find it, I said. She was counting on it. She told me you were the most honest man she'd ever known, that you'd do the right thing even if it destroyed you. Campbell's voice softened. She also said if Philip found out she was aware of the theft, he'd move the money offshore, destroy evidence, maybe even... He stopped. What? She was afraid of him, Mr. Ashford. Not physically, but she believed he was capable of anything if cornered. That's why she pretended to have dementia, to make herself seem harmless, not worth worrying about. I thought of Emily those last few years, playing confused, playing weak, while all along she was gathering evidence like a prosecutor building a case. We've been monitoring your son's account since April 1st, Campbell continued, the day after your wife died, and we've already found activity that concerns us. He pulled out a printout, highlighted sections jumping out. April 2nd, one day after Emily's death, Philip transferred $47,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. That's obstruction of justice and money laundering on top of the elder abuse charges. One day. Philip had waited 1 day after his mother died, before moving money out of the country. Mr. Ashford, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know any of this? Were you aware your son was stealing from your wife? The question felt like an accusation, even though Campbell's tone was neutral. No. My voice came out raw. I thought Emily had dementia. I thought we were broke. I thought the cancer treatment was too expensive, that we couldn't afford it. She let me believe that. She protected you, Campbell said. That's what she told me she was doing. She said if you knew, you'd try to fix it. Try to confront Philip. Try to get the money back. Try to forgive him because he's your son. She said you'd sacrifice the evidence for family peace. He was right. She'd been right. If Emily had told me 3 years ago that Philip was stealing, I would have sat him down, talked to him, probably believed whatever excuse he gave me. Your wife also mentioned something else, Campbell said. She said she was refusing cancer treatment, that the money she'd saved, the $2 million in the certificate, could have paid for treatment 10 times over, but she chose to die instead. Why? The word came out broken. Because she said if she drained the CD for treatment, there'd be nothing left to prove what Philip had done. The money wasn't for her anymore. It was evidence. It was justice. Campbell closed the folder. Your wife chose death over letting your son get away with it. The conference room felt airless. I couldn't look at either of them. We need to move quickly, Campbell said. Your son is asking questions at the front desk right now. He knows someone's here, knows something's happening. Within the week, I'll have enough evidence for arrest warrants, but I need you to understand what that means. Arrest warrants, I repeated, for multiple felonies, elder financial abuse, forgery, money laundering, conspiracy. Your son is looking at serious prison time, Mr. Ashford. 10 years, maybe more. Campbell's eyes held mine. And I need to know right now, are you going to protect your son, or are you going to honor your wife's wishes? I looked down at my hands. At the yellow Post-it note I'd been carrying since Saturday night, Emily's handwriting fading at the creases. Trust no one in the family. She'd known I'd have to make this choice. Known it would break me. When do we talk to the attorney? I asked. Campbell nodded slowly, something like respect crossing his face. This afternoon. His name is Clarence Pemberton. Old Sacramento. Your wife met with him 6 times over the last 7 years. He has documents you need to see. Clarence Pemberton's law office was an old Sacramento 3rd floor of a brick building that had been standing since the gold rush, and when he opened the door to greet me, I saw my wife's eyes looking back, the same sharp intelligence, the same quiet determination. We'd left the bank through a back entrance. Campbell had arranged it after Philip started demanding to see the manager, his voice carrying through the lobby. Someone's asking about my mother's accounts, he'd told Sandra. I have a right to know who. By then we were already gone. Now it was Tuesday afternoon, and I stood in an office that smelled like old paper and furniture polish. Law books lined every wall, floor to ceiling. Clarence himself was 73, white-haired and slight, wearing a cardigan that had gone out of style in the 90s. But his handshake was firm, and his eyes, Emily's eyes, missed nothing. "Gregory," he said, "I've been expecting you. Emily said you'd come." "You knew," I said. "All this time you knew." "I did." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit, please. We have a great deal to discuss." Detective Campbell had come with me, standing now by the window overlooking 2nd Street. Clarence nodded to him like they'd met before. "Detective, Emily spoke highly of you, said you were one of the few who actually listened to victims." "She made it easy," Campbell replied. "Most thorough documentation I've ever seen." Clarence moved to a wall of filing cabinets and pulled out a storage box. It was the kind lawyers used for case files, heavy cardboard with a lid. Someone had labeled it in black marker, "Ashford case, to be opened only after my death." Emily's handwriting, precise, unshakable. "Your wife came to me in November 2017, Clarence said, setting the box on his desk. "Walked into this office and said, 'I need to document something quietly, something that's going to take years to prove.' I've known Emily since 1982. We met in a constitutional law class at Sacramento State. She was the smartest person in the room always. So, when she asked for help, I didn't question her." He opened the box. Inside were manila folders neatly organized, each one labeled with dates and categories. Bank statements, receipts, correspondence, a small USB drive in a plastic case, and at the bottom, a leather-bound notebook. "She came here 6 times over the last 7 years, Clarence continued. Each visit she'd add more evidence. Bank statements showing withdrawals she hadn't authorized. Receipts for purchases she'd never made. Text messages she'd somehow managed to retrieve from Philip's phone. How did she get his text messages? I asked. Clarence smiled thinly. Your wife was a librarian. She understood information systems better than most IT professionals. She also understood people. When Philip added her to his phone plan in 2018, supposedly to save money, she gained access to the account management portal. From there, she could see every text, every call log. She documented all of it. He handed me one of the folders. Inside were screenshots printed out and dated, text exchanges between Philip and Amanda, between Philip and someone named Marcus Bradford. The conversations were coded careful, but the meaning was clear enough. Mom's account's looking thin. Might be time to find the other one. She doesn't remember anything anymore anyway. Won't even notice. I closed the folder before I could read more. The last time I saw Emily was March 26th of this year, Clarence said quietly. 10 days before she died. She was so thin I barely recognized her. But she walked in here under her own power, sat in that chair you're sitting in now, and dictated a sworn statement. We recorded it, had it notarized, sealed it with the instructions that it not be opened until after her death, and after you discovered the certificate. A video, Campbell asked, leaning forward. Audio and video. 37 minutes of testimony. Emily explaining every theft, every manipulation, every moment she'd pretended to be confused so Philip wouldn't realize she was building a case. Clarence's voice wavered. She knew she was dying, knew she had maybe weeks left, and she spent those weeks making sure the evidence was perfect. The USB drive sat in its plastic case, innocuous and terrible. That drive contains everything, Clarence said. Scanned copies of the forged power of attorney documents, email exchanges between Philip and Amanda discussing how to access the CD, bank records showing the systematic theft, phone records proving coordination. If you're going to prosecute, detective, this is your smoking gun. Campbell picked up the drive carefully, like it was evidence at a crime scene, which I supposed it was. Mr. Pemberton, this is exactly what we need. With this and the complaint Mrs. Ashford filed with my office, we can move forward immediately. That was Emily's intention, Clarence said. She told me I won't be alive to testify, but the evidence will speak for itself. She was very clear about that. I looked at the box, at the folders full of my wife's careful documentation, at the years of work she'd done in secret. Why didn't she tell me? The question came out raw. Why go through all this alone? Clarence sat down heavily in his chair. She was protecting you, Gregory. She said if you knew you'd try to intervene, try to talk to Philip, try to fix the relationship, try to get him help. She said you believed in redemption and second chances, and she loved that about you. But she also knew it would compromise the evidence. So she suffered alone. Not entirely alone. She had me. She had Detective Campbell once she contacted him. But yes, she carried most of this burden herself, because she believed justice mattered more than comfort. Clarence reached into the box one more time and pulled out the leather-bound notebook. There's one more thing. Emily's personal journal, 2017 through 2024. 7 years of entries. She wrote in it almost every day. You should read it tonight, Gregory. Alone. It's not evidence, it's too personal for that. It's her voice, her thoughts, the parts she couldn't tell anyone else. He held it out to me. The leather was worn soft at the corners, the pages thick with ink. I took it. It was heavier than it should have been. Emily was the bravest person I ever knew, Clarence said, and his voice finally broke. And the loneliest. She documented every theft, yes. But she also documented why she stayed silent, why she let them think she was losing her mind, why she chose this path. Read it, Gregory. Understand what she sacrificed. Not just her life, her dignity, her final years, everything. The notebook sat in my hands like a confession. I opened the leather cover at 10 o'clock that Tuesday night, expecting financial records. What I found was my wife's voice page after page of careful observations, dates, dollar amounts, and a truth that made my chest tighten with grief and rage. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light. I'd made coffee I didn't drink. Now it was just me and Emily's words, and I was terrified of what I'd find. The first entry was dated November 12th, 2017. Gregory thinks I'm losing my mind. I heard him on the phone with Paul Dixon today asking about memory clinics. I wanted to tell him the truth, but I can't. Not yet. If Philip knows I'm documenting this, he'll destroy the evidence. I have to let them think I'm helpless. I read it 4 times. The words didn't change. She'd been pretending from the very beginning. January 8th, 2018. $22,000 withdrawn from joint checking. Philip said it was for property taxes. I called the county assessor. Actual tax bill, $8,400. Where did the other $13,600 go? April 14th, 2018. Amanda showed me hospital bills from UC Davis, $30,000 for Lily's emergency surgery. I called the hospital. No record of Lily being treated there. The documents were fake. Page after page of small thefts adding up to something monstrous. July 19th, 2019 made my hands shake. Philip brought Dr. Dixon today without warning. Said I've been having episodes. Had a list prepared for getting conversations leaving the stove on getting lost. All lies. But I played along. When Dixon asked what year it was, I said 1987. The look on Philip's face relief mixed with satisfaction. He wanted me diagnosed. Emily had failed cognitive tests on purpose, had pretended to forget her own address. It's easier than I thought becoming invisible. When you're a confused old woman, people stop seeing you as a threat. They talk in front of you like you're not there. That's when you learn the truth. The entries from 2020 onward detailed her isolation. February 9th, 2021. Philip changed my phone number without asking. Said it was to reduce spam calls. Now when old friends try to call, they get disconnected. I'm disappearing one person at a time. June 23rd, 2021. Amanda convinced the building manager I'm not allowed visitors without family approval. Mrs. Chen from 3B tried to visit with Soup yesterday. They turned her away. Every entry was dated. Every detail verified. Then January 15th, 2024. The handwriting shakier. Dr. Dixon confirmed it today. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. He wants to start treatment immediately. Cost $200,000 to $300,000. I told him no. I had to stop reading. Walked to the window. Emily had refused treatment. Had come home and pretended everything was fine. The next entry explained why. Gregory will want to use our savings, but our savings are gone. Philip took them years ago. The only money left is the certificate, and if I touch that, there's nothing left to prove what he did. The money isn't for me anymore. It's evidence. It's justice. She'd chosen to die. Consciously, deliberately. The entries that followed were shorter, written in increasing pain. Emily documented visits she went to, alone prescriptions she filled at pharmacies across town, so Philip wouldn't know how sick she was. March 28th, 2024. 8 days before she died. 8 days left, maybe less. Dr. Dixon says I should be in hospice, but I can't go yet. Not until everything is ready. Not until I'm sure Gregory will find the certificate will see the truth. I have to make it to April. The final entry was April 1st, the day she died. Gregory is still asleep. I can hear him snoring that soft sound that used to annoy me and now makes me want to cry. I won't wake him. Let him have a few more hours before his world changes. I've left everything he needs, the certificate, the instructions to Russell and Clarence and Detective Campbell. I've built the case. All he has to do is finish it. I trust him. He's the best man I've ever known, even if I had to lie to him at the end. Some betrayals are beyond forgiveness. Some truths are worth dying to protect. I love you, Gregory. Finish what I started. The page blurred. I was crying ugly, choking sobs I hadn't allowed since the funeral. Emily had died that afternoon while I was at the grocery store. I'd thought it was peaceful, natural, but she'd waited, held on until everything was in place. Then she'd let go. I closed the notebook and sat in the dark for a long time. My wife had died alone in pain, protecting a secret that would destroy our son. She'd sacrificed everything, not just her money, but her dignity, her final year, her chance at treatment, because she believed justice mattered more than comfort, because she believed some betrayals were beyond forgiveness. The question was whether I had the courage to finish what she'd started. Outside, a car alarm went off, then stopped. The refrigerator hummed, normal sounds in a world that would never be normal again. I picked up my phone, called Detective Campbell. Nearly midnight, but he'd said any time. He answered on the second ring. Mr. Ashford. I read the notebook, all of it. A pause. And she knew everything. She documented everything. She died protecting the evidence. I know. She chose to die detective. Chose it. Because treating the cancer would have meant using the money. And using the money would have meant Philip getting away with it. I know, Campbell said quietly. What do we do now? Now, Campbell said, we finish what your wife started. Detective Campbell called Wednesday morning with the kind of controlled excitement investigators get when a case breaks wide open. We traced the money, he said. All of it. I was still at the kitchen table where I'd spent most of the night. Emily's notebook closed in front of me. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her handwriting, saw those final words. Finish what I started. Where did it go? I asked. Everywhere and nowhere. Campbell's voice carried an edge of satisfaction. Your son's been running a sophisticated money laundering operation for 6 years. We just cracked it. He arrived at my apartment 30 minutes later with a laptop and a file folder, thick with bank records, spread them across my kitchen table like a general planning a battle. Your son and daughter-in-law live in a $680,000 house in El Dorado Hills, Campbell began, purchased in 2018. They drive 2 luxury vehicles, Tesla Model X and a BMW X5. Your granddaughter attends Sierra Ridge Academy private school tuition, running $42,000 a year. Add mortgage, car payments, property taxes, and general lifestyle expenses, and they're burning through at least $200,000 annually. He pulled up a spreadsheet on his laptop. Philip's legitimate income from pharmaceutical sales, $95,000 a year. Maybe $100,000 in a good year with bonuses. The math was obvious even to me. He can't afford any of that. Exactly, so we dug deeper. Campbell clicked through screens. September 2018. Philip registered a limited liability company called Garrett Holdings, filed in Delaware, which is a red flag. Delaware has loose reporting requirements, making it popular for shell companies. Shell company, a business that exists only on paper. No employees, no office, no products or services. Just a bank account for moving money around. Campbell pulled up incorporation documents. Garrett Holdings has received $847,000 in consulting fees between 2018 and 2024. The payments came from offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and British Virgin Islands, accounts we can't easily trace back to their source. He showed me the pattern. Money flowing into Garrett Holdings in chunks, $30,000 here, $50,000 there, always under the reporting threshold that would trigger automatic federal scrutiny. But we know where it really came from, Campbell continued. Your son withdrew money from your wife's accounts, transferred it to these offshore accounts through a series of intermediary banks, then had it sent back to Garrett Holdings as legitimate-looking consulting income. Once it was in Garrett Holdings, he could move it to his personal accounts without raising suspicion. Money laundering, I said. Textbook laundering. And here's the critical part. Amanda Ashford is listed as Garrett Holdings' chief financial officer. She signed the incorporation documents. She manages the bank accounts. She structured the whole operation. Campbell pulled out another document. A corporate filing, with Amanda's signature at the bottom, her handwriting confident and clear. Your daughter-in-law isn't just complicit, Mr. Ashford. She's the architect. Philip's the one who stole from your wife, but Amanda built the system that let him hide it. I stared at Amanda's signature. Remembered her standing in my apartment Sunday, smiling sympathetically, touching my arm. We're so sorry about Emily. There's more, Campbell said. In March of 2023, Philip withdrew $47,000 from one of the joint accounts with your wife. Told her it was for a medical emergency, said Lily needed emergency dental surgery. We tracked that money. Want to know where it went? I nodded, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. It's Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas. He gambled it away in 3 days. Blackjack and poker mostly. Lost every cent. So while Emily was documenting his thefts, planning her case, dying of cancer, she couldn't afford to treat Philip was in Las Vegas burning through $47,000 at casino tables. We've got him 6 ways from Sunday, Campbell said. Elder financial abuse, forgery, money laundering, wire fraud, conspiracy, and now we've found someone who can testify about how the whole thing started. Who? Marcus Bradford, former senior accounts manager at Wells Fargo Midtown. Worked there for 8 years until he was fired in October 2020. Campbell pulled up a photo on his laptop. A man in his mid-30s, dark hair, tired eyes. He's the one who helped Philip try to access your wife's certificate of deposit. My stomach dropped. He was in on it. Not exactly. He was manipulated by Amanda. She targeted him, specifically started a relationship with him, asked questions about banking systems, exploited his access to customer accounts. When he finally realized what she was doing and refused to help, she threatened to report him for unauthorized account access. Wells Fargo fired him anyway. He's been blacklisted from banking ever since. Why would he testify? Because he wants Amanda Ashford to pay for destroying his career, and because he has information about her background that changes everything. Campbell closed his laptop. Amanda's maiden name is Palmer. Her father owned a commercial real estate company in Orange County that went bankrupt in 2015 amid fraud allegations. He's currently under federal investigation. Marcus did some digging after Amanda disappeared from his life. Found out she dated 3 other men in finance between 2014 and 2019. All of them lost money or access, or both. She has a pattern. Exactly. She identifies targets, builds relationships, exploits them for information or access, then moves on. Your son isn't her first victim. He's just the most profitable one. Campbell stood gathering his papers. I've arranged for you to meet Marcus tomorrow afternoon. 3 o'clock, Tower Cafe downtown. He wants to tell you directly what Amanda did to him, how she operates. And he's willing to testify in court about all of it. Will that be enough to arrest them? Between Marcus's testimony, your wife's documentation, the financial records, and the money laundering evidence. Campbell's expression was grim. We'll have arrest warrants by Monday, maybe sooner. Your son and daughter-in-law are looking at serious federal prison time. He paused at the door. Mr. Ashford, I know this isn't easy, but your wife spent 8 years building this case. She documented every theft, every lie, every manipulation. She died protecting the evidence. The least we can do is use it. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the papers he had left behind. Spreadsheets showing money flowing through shell companies and offshore accounts. Corporate documents with Amanda's signature. Photos of the house in El Dorado Hills, the luxury cars, the private school. All of it paid for with money stolen from Emily. Money she could have used to save her own life. I picked up my phone. There was a message I'd been avoiding since yesterday, from Philip. Dad, I need to talk to you. It's important. Call me. I deleted it without listening to the rest. The man waiting for us at Tower Cafe looked like he hadn't slept in days. 35 years old, wearing a cheap suit that hung loose on his frame. Hands wrapped around a coffee cup, like it was the only solid thing left in his life. Tower Cafe sat on Broadway, a Sacramento landmark with mismatched furniture and walls covered in local art. Campbell and I arrived at 3 sharp. Marcus Bradford was already there, corner table staring at nothing. Mr. Ashford, Campbell said as we approached. This is Marcus Bradford. Marcus looked up, red-rimmed eyes, shadows underneath. When he stood to shake my hand, his fingers were cold despite the coffee. I'm the reason your son knew about the CD, he said. I told Amanda it existed. I'm sorry. We sat. Marcus kept his hands wrapped around his cup. I met Amanda Ashford in October 2019, he began. Banking conference at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco. She approached me at the networking reception. We talked for 3 hours. She asked intelligent questions about wealth management, estate planning. I thought she was genuinely interested. His voice was flat, reciting facts. We started dating. She never mentioned being married at first. When she told me about Philip in December, she said they were separated working through a divorce. Said her mother-in-law was holding assets that should have been divided. You believed her? I said. I wanted to. Marcus's jaw tightened. She was strategic, never pushed too hard. Just casual questions. How do banks track large deposits? What triggers fraud alerts? I thought I was making conversation about my work. When did she ask about Emily? Campbell asked. March 4th, 2020. She called me at work, said she needed help. Asked if I could look up an account for Emily Ashford. Said her husband's mother had severe dementia, couldn't remember her accounts, that the family needed access for medical expenses. The lie was smooth, practiced. I looked up the account. Marcus looked at me directly. Account number, balance when it opened, $2,100,000. I told her everything. This was how Philip had known, through Amanda, who'd cultivated a relationship with a bank employee specifically for this information. March 9th, Amanda brought me power of attorney documents. Said they'd been notarized, but the bank kept rejecting them. Asked if I could manually bypass the verification system. Did you? Campbell asked. I started to, but something felt wrong. So I ran them through proper authentication protocols instead. He paused. They were flagged immediately, forged signatures, wrong paper stock. When I called the notary whose seal was on the documents, he had no record of meeting Emily Ashford. What happened when you confronted her? She denied everything. Then when I said I was reporting it as fraud, she threatened me. Said she had text messages where I'd mentioned looking up the account, that I'd be fired for protocol violations. And I reported it anyway. Filed a fraud alert, flagged the account, documented everything. Wells Fargo investigated the forged POA, but they also investigated me. His voice went bitter. 6 months later, they fired me. Client confidentiality violation. Didn't matter that I'd refused to help, that I'd reported the fraud. I've been unemployed 4 years, blacklisted from banking. Amanda disappeared after that. Blocked my number, deleted her accounts. I tried to warn your son. Left him a voicemail saying his wife had tried to use me to steal from his mother. He never called back. Campbell leaned forward. Tell him what you found about her background. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed screenshots. Her maiden name is Amanda Lynn Palmer. Her father owned a commercial real estate company in Orange County. Went bankrupt in 2015. He's under federal investigation for mortgage fraud. She learned from her father, Campbell said. I found 3 other men she dated between 2014 and 2019. All worked in finance. I contacted them. Same pattern every time Amanda dates them, asks strategic questions, tries to exploit their access, then disappears. Your son isn't her first victim, Campbell told me. Just the most successful one. Marcus put his phone away. I lost my career because I trusted her. But if there's a trial, I'll testify. I'll tell a jury exactly what she asked me to do, how she operates. He looked at me with defiance. Your wife lost her life. I lost my career. The least we can do is make sure they don't get away with it. Campbell closed his notebook and looked at me. We have enough now. The forged POA documents the systematic withdrawals, Marcus's testimony, Emily's notebook. I'm filing for arrest warrants tomorrow morning. He paused. Mr. Ashford, when we execute those warrants, it's going to be fast. You need to prepare yourself. Your son and daughter-in-law will be in custody within 48 hours. And your granddaughter. He didn't finish. Didn't have to. Lily was 8 years old, and her parents were about to be arrested for multiple felonies. Campbell called me at 6:45 on Thursday morning, April 24th. It's happening now, was all he said, before I heard car doors slamming in the background, the crackle of police radio, someone shouting commands. 2 weeks had passed since our meeting with Marcus Bradford. 2 weeks of Campbell building his case, gathering statements, coordinating with federal prosecutors. 2 weeks of me living in limbo, knowing what was coming, but not when. Now it was here. We're at the El Dorado Hills residence, Campbell said, phone still pressed to his ear as I heard movement around him. 4 units. Your son just answered the door. I was sitting at my kitchen table, same place I'd been since 5 that morning, when Campbell had texted me a single word today. I'd made coffee, hadn't drunk it, just sat there waiting for this call, knowing it would come and dreading it anyway. Through the phone, I heard Campbell's voice calm and official. "Philip Ashford, you're under arrest for elder financial abuse forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." Then Philip's voice confused and rising in panic. What are you talking about? There's some mistake." "No mistake, Mr. Ashford. We have documentation of $1,850,000 withdrawn from accounts belonging to your mother between 2016 and 2024, along with 3 forged power of attorney attempts in 2020. A woman's voice in the background, Amanda Sharp, and controlled even now. "Don't say anything, Philip. We need our lawyer." Campbell narrated for me in low tones, professional detachment masking what must have been satisfaction. "He's not resisting. White dress shirt, barefoot. Probably just woke up. Neighbor across the street is filming on her phone. I heard the metallic click of handcuffs, Miranda rights being read in that rhythmic cadence. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Philip's voice again breaking now. "Dad did. Dad is this because of that certificate. That money was supposed to be for the family, for all of us." Campbell cut him off. "I save it for your attorney." "Second unit just confirmed," Campbell said to me. "Amanda Ashford located at Serenity Day Spa on El Dorado Hills Boulevard. She drove there separately this morning. Smart. Or she thought she was smart. Splitting up so if one got arrested, the other could disappear. But Campbell had anticipated that. Radio chatter crackled through the phone. "Suspect in custody. Requesting lawyer. Not cooperative." "Amanda's playing it cooler than your son," Campbell said. "But we've got her dead to rights. Marcus Bradford's testimony puts her as the architect of the whole thing." There was a pause. Background noise changed, someone talking urgently, a child's voice. "Mr. Ashford." Campbell's tone shifted gentler. "There's a child here, your granddaughter, 8 years old, asking where her daddy's going." My chest tightened. I'd only met Lily once at Emily's funeral, once years before, at a strained Christmas dinner. Philip and Amanda had kept her separate from us, controlled access like they'd controlled everything else. "What happens to her?" I asked. "Child Protective Services is en route. She can't stay here alone with both parents in custody." Campbell paused meaningfully. "She'll be placed in temporary foster care pending a custody hearing, unless there's family willing to take her." I looked around the apartment. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, living room filled with Emily's books, and that old piano neither of us had played in years. Not built for a child, but better than foster care. "They're transporting your son to the van now," Campbell continued. "Amanda's en route from the spa. Both will be processed at Sacramento County Main Jail, booking fingerprints, holding cells. Arraignment scheduled for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Will they make bail?" Campbell was quiet a moment. "Judge will see the evidence, elderly victim's substantial dollar amount, forged documents, clear flight risk, given the planned nature. I'd be surprised if bail's set under $500,000 for Philip, $750 for Amanda. I thought about the house in El Dorado Hills, probably mortgaged to the hilt. The cars, the lifestyle, all built on stolen money. They couldn't raise that kind of bail, not without selling everything, and that would take weeks. They'll stay in custody until trial," I said. "Most likely." Another voice in the background, closer this time. A social worker, professional and kind. "Lily, honey, come with me. We're going to take care of you. Everything's going to be okay." But it wasn't okay. A child's parents were being arrested for stealing from her grandmother. Nothing about that was okay. "Mr. Ashford, I need to go. CPS just arrived." Campbell's voice dropped lower, and I heard him move away from the activity. "But you need to think about what happens next. Your granddaughter needs family. And in 3 weeks, you're going to be sitting in a federal courtroom, watching your son and daughter-in-law go on trial." He paused, and I heard the weight of what he wasn't saying, the choice I'd have to make. "You need to decide what kind of justice you want," Campbell said quietly. "And what kind of mercy." The line went silent except for muffled voices, car doors closing and engine starting. "Detective," I said. "Yes, tell the social worker, tell them I'm coming, for Lily. Tell them her grandfather is coming to get her." A long pause. Then, "I'll tell them, but Mr. Ashford, you understand what that means? Taking custody of your granddaughter while her parents are on trial. It's going to be complicated, difficult. She's going to have questions you won't know how to answer. Emily would have wanted me to protect her, I said. That's all the answer I need. All right? Campbell's voice carried something like respect. I'll make the arrangements, but Gregory, he'd never used my first name before. Your son is going to prison, probably for a long time. And when he finds out you're the one who gave us the evidence, who pushed for prosecution, who took his daughter. He didn't finish. I know, I said. I hung up and sat in the quiet apartment. The morning light was coming through the window, now turning everything gold. Somewhere across town, my son was being processed into jail. My daughter-in-law was demanding her phone call. And my granddaughter was asking questions no 8-year-old should have to ask. Emily's notebook still sat on the kitchen counter where I had left it 2 weeks ago. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the worn leather. Finish what I started she'd written. I was finishing it. All of it. Even the parts that would break what was left of this family. Even the parts that meant becoming the villain in my own son's story. Because some betrayals were beyond forgiveness. And some truths were worth protecting no matter the cost. The Robert T. Matsui Federal Courthouse in downtown Sacramento was all dark wood and cold marble, the kind of space designed to make you feel the weight of justice. And I sat in the third row, watching my son and daughter-in-law stand before Judge Eleanor Hartman to answer for what they'd done. 3 weeks had passed since the arrests. 3 weeks of Lily, living in my one-bedroom apartment, sleeping on the pull-out couch, asking questions I couldn't answer. 3 weeks of Philip's lawyer, calling, leaving messages I deleted. 3 weeks of preparing for this moment. Now, it was Monday, May 15th, 9 in the morning, and the trial was beginning. Judge Eleanor Hartman presided 60-something gray hair, pulled back severely wire-rimmed glasses that caught the light when she looked down at the documents before her. She'd been a federal judge for 20 years, Campbell had told me. Fair but unforgiving when it came to elder abuse cases. The United States versus Philip Michael Ashford and Amanda Lynn Ashford, she announced. The defendants are charged with 3 counts of elder financial abuse, 7 counts of forgery, 2 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud. Philip stood at the defense table in a suit I'd never seen before, probably borrowed from his attorney Maxwell Grant, who looked expensive and confident. Amanda wore a conservative navy dress, hair pulled back, makeup understated. They'd coached her well. She looked like a concerned suburban mother, not a woman who'd orchestrated years of theft. Prosecutor James Whitman stood for his opening statement. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the kind of intensity that suggested he took these cases personally. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began, Emily Ashford spent the final years of her life pretending to lose her mind while secretly documenting her son's crimes. She faked dementia. She failed cognitive tests on purpose. She let her family think she couldn't remember her own address, all while building an airtight case against them. He walked toward the jury box, making eye contact with each member. May, why would a woman do this? Why would she suffer such indignity, such isolation, such loneliness? Because her son, Philip Ashford, was stealing from her, systematically, ruthlessly. $1,850,000 over 8 years. And his wife Amanda Ashford built the system that allowed him to hide it. Maxwell Grant objected relevance inflammatory, but Judge Hartman overruled. You will hear testimony, Whitman continued, from the bank manager who flagged forged documents, from the detective who investigated the money laundering scheme, from a man whose career was destroyed when Amanda Ashford manipulated him to gain access to her mother-in-law's accounts. And you will hear in her own words from Emily Ashford herself, a woman who chose death over letting her son get away with it. Grant stood for the defense. His strategy was predictable: family misunderstandings, confused elderly woman's son trying to help manage finances. This is a tragedy of miscommunication, he said. Philip Ashford loved his mother. When she began showing signs of cognitive decline, he did what any caring son would do. He helped manage her accounts, paid her bills, made sure she was taken care of. The prosecution will paint this as theft. We will show you it was love. I felt sick, heard the lie wrapped in reasonable-sounding words. The prosecution calls Russell Jennings, Whitman announced. Russell took the stand, was sworn in. He'd aged in the month since I'd first met him, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. This case had taken something from him, too. Whitman established his credentials efficiently. 27 years in banking, regional manager at Wells Fargo Midtown since 2010. Mr. Jennings, do you recognize this document? Whitman displayed the certificate of deposit on the courtroom screens. I do. That's the CD Emily Ashford opened April 12th, 2017. Initial deposit $2 million. Current value $3,245,670. And did there come a time when someone attempted to access this account? Yes, March 2020, 3 separate attempts over 2 weeks. Russell's voice was steady professional. March 9th, 14th, and 20th. Each time using power of attorney documents claiming Mrs. Ashford was mentally incapacitated and unable to manage her finances. The forged POA documents appeared on screen, Philip's name at the top, his signature at the bottom, swearing under oath that Emily couldn't manage her own affairs. What did you do when these documents were presented? I flagged them immediately. Mrs. Ashford had warned me this might happen. She'd come to the bank in 2017 specifically to tell me that someone might try to steal from her, and that I should deny any access requests and notify her directly. Murmurs through the courtroom. Judge Hartman's gavel came down once. Silence. Mrs. Ashford knew someone would try to steal from her. Whitman repeated for emphasis. Did she say who? No, but she was very specific that no one, including family, should be able to access the account without her personal authorization. Grant's cross-examination was brief, ineffective. He tried to suggest Russell had misunderstood Emily's instructions, that she'd been confused, but Russell held firm. Emily had been sharp, clear, methodical, not confused at all. The prosecution introduces Exhibit 12, Whitman said. Emily Ashford's personal journal kept from November 2017 through April 2025. A court clerk held up the leather-bound notebook. My chest tightened seeing it in someone else's hands. Whitman read selected entries aloud. Emily's careful documentation of thefts, her description of faking cognitive tests, her observations about being isolated, cut off from friends and family. The courtroom was silent except for his voice and Emily's words. It's easier than I thought becoming invisible, he read. When you're a confused old woman, people stop seeing you as a threat. They talk in front of you like you're not there. That's when you learn the truth. I watched Philip. His face had gone pale, hands gripping the edge of the defense table. He was shaking slightly. Hearing his mother's words, understanding for the first time that she'd known everything, that she'd watched him steal from her while pretending not to notice. Amanda sat perfectly still. No emotion, just cold calculation, already thinking 3 moves ahead. Whitman closed the journal and looked at the jury. Over the next 3 days, you will hear from witnesses who were manipulated by Amanda Ashford. You will hear from experts who will explain how these defendants systematically exploited an elderly cancer patient. And you will hear in her own words recorded on video from Emily Ashford herself. He paused, letting that sink in. The prosecution calls Marcus Bradford. Marcus Bradford took the stand at 9:15 Tuesday morning, and I watched my son's attorney realize in real time that his entire defense strategy had just collapsed. Whitman moved efficiently through preliminaries. Mr. Bradford, what was your occupation in March 2020? Senior accounts manager at Wells Fargo, Midtown Branch, Sacramento. 8 years with the bank. And your current occupation? Marcus's jaw tightened. Unemployed. I was terminated from Wells Fargo in October 2020 for protocol violations. The jury leaned forward. This wasn't what they'd expected. Mr. Bradford, how did you meet Amanda Ashford? Banking Industry Conference, Fairmont Hotel, San Francisco. October 19th, 2019. Saturday evening networking reception. What was the nature of your interaction? We talked for approximately 3 hours. She asked questions about estate planning, asset protection, how banks handle accounts for elderly clients with cognitive decline. Marcus's voice was steady, factual. She said she worked in healthcare consulting. Whitman displayed text messages on the courtroom screens Marcus's phone records subpoenaed during discovery. Mr. Bradford, can you read the message from Amanda Ashford dated January 7th, 2020? Marcus read aloud, question for you if a family member has a CD, but can't remember opening it. How would someone find out the account details asking for a friend dealing with a parent's dementia? And did you respond? Yes. I explained that family members could request information with proper documentation, death certificate power of attorney, or being listed as beneficiary. Did that satisfy her? No. Over the next 2 months, she asked increasingly specific questions. What if the bank rejects a POA? How do signature verification systems work? Can account access be manually overridden? The jury was taking notes now. I saw one woman shake her head slightly. Mr. Bradford, did there come a time when Amanda Ashford asked you directly about a specific account? March 4th, 2020. She called me at work, asked if I could look up an account for Emily Ashford. Said it was her husband's mother, that Emily had severe dementia, that the family desperately needed access for medical expenses. Did you comply? Marcus's voice dropped. Yes. I looked up the account. Confirmed it existed, certificate of deposit balance approximately $2,100,000. I gave her the account number. The courtroom stirred. Judge Hartman tapped her gavel once. What happened next? March 9th, Amanda brought me power of attorney documents. Said they'd been notarized, but the bank kept rejecting them. Asked if I could manually approve the request. Whitman displayed the forged POA on screen, the same documents Russell had shown. What did you do? I ran them through proper authentication protocols. The signatures were flagged immediately wrong, pressure wrong, pen type, notary sealed dimensions, off by 0.03 millimeters. And you informed Amanda Ashford? Yes. I told her the documents were fraudulent. She became angry, said I must have made a mistake. When I refused to override the system, she threatened to report me for unauthorized account access. Did you report the fraud? Yes, immediately. Filed an internal fraud report, flagged the account, documented everything. And the consequences. Wells Fargo terminated my employment 6 months later. I'd violated client confidentiality by disclosing account information without authorization. The fact that I'd ultimately refused to help didn't matter. I've been unable to find work in banking since. I watched Philip sitting beside Maxwell Grant. His face was ashen, staring at Marcus like he'd never seen him before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe Amanda had kept Marcus secret, just another tool in her arsenal. Austin Reed stood for Amanda's cross-examination. Mr. Bradford, isn't it true you were romantically involved with my client? Yes. And isn't it possible you're testifying now out of spite because she ended the relationship? Marcus looked at Reed directly. She didn't end it. I did when I realized she'd used me to commit fraud. And I'm testifying because an elderly woman with cancer died, while her son stole everything she had. If that makes me spiteful, so be it. Reed sat down. No further questions. The prosecution calls Kimberly Morrison. A woman I didn't recognize approached the stand, late 30s, professional business suit, dark hair pulled back. She didn't look at Philip as she took the oath. Ms. Morrison, what is your relationship to Philip Ashford? I was married to him from June 2011 to March 2019. 8 years. This I hadn't known. Philip's first marriage. Campbell had mentioned it during investigation, but hearing it in court made it real. Ms. Morrison, during your marriage, did you maintain separate financial accounts? Yes, a savings account from before we married. Approximately $62,000. What happened to that account? Kimberly's voice was steady, practiced. Between July 2017 and December 2018, $47,000 was withdrawn without my knowledge or permission. I discovered it in January 2019 during divorce proceedings. Did you determine who made the withdrawals? Yes, my ex-husband. He'd accessed my online banking, transferred money to an account registered to AP Financial Consulting. And who owned AP Financial Consulting? Amanda Palmer, the woman he'd been having an affair with, his current wife. The courtroom erupted. Judge Hartman's gavel came down hard. Order! Whitman displayed bank records. Ms. Morrison, can you confirm these transfer records? Yes. 17 transfers between July 2017 and December 2018. Amounts ranging from $1,000 to $5,000. Did you press charges at the time? No. My attorney advised that criminal charges would complicate the divorce and cost more in legal fees than I'd recover. I just wanted out. And looking back now, Kimberly looked at Philip for the first time. I should have reported it. If I had, maybe Emily Ashford would still be alive. I'm sorry I didn't. I'm sorry I let him get away with it. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Whitman returned to his table, gathering papers. Then he stopped, turned back to Judge Hartman. Your Honor, the prosecution has one final witness. We call Emily Ashford. The courtroom went silent. Judge Hartman frowned. Counselor, the victim is deceased. Whitman nodded. Yes, Your Honor. But in March 2022, Mrs. Ashford recorded a notarized sworn statement, with her attorney anticipating exactly this situation. We request permission to present her testimony via video recording, pursuant to Federal Rule of Evidence 804B. Maxwell Grant was on his feet. Objection. Hearsay. Exception for unavailable declarants with corroborating evidence, Your Honor. Whitman countered. Mrs. Ashford is deceased. Her statement was made under oath, notarized, and corroborated by physical evidence presented at trial. Judge Hartman considered. I'll allow it, but, Mr. Whitman, this had better be relevant. It is, Your Honor. The lights dimmed. The lights dimmed at exactly 2:15 on Tuesday afternoon, May 16, 2025, and the air in Judge Eleanor Hartman's courtroom became heavier, more sacred somehow, as if we were no longer in a federal building in the downtown Sacramento, but in some liminal space between the living and the dead. The screen at the front of the courtroom glowed to life with a soft electronic hum. And then my wife appeared there, sitting in Clarence Pemberton's office looking straight at me across 3 years, and the unbridgeable distance of death. I stopped breathing. The date stamp in the corner read March 15, 2022, 3 years before she died. I did the math involuntarily. This was recorded when Emily still had roughly 36 months left, when the cancer was still stage 1, when treatment might have saved her. Emily was thinner in the video than I remembered her being that year, her cheekbones sharper, the lines around her mouth deeper. But her eyes were clear and steady, that particular shade of gray-blue I'd fallen in love with 49 years earlier. She looked directly into the camera with the same expression I'd seen 1,000 times when she was about to explain something difficult to a child who wouldn't understand yet, patient, compassionate, but absolutely unwilling to soften the truth. Behind her, I could see Clarence's office wall with its floor-to-ceiling law books, the burgundy leather spines creating a backdrop that made Emily look somehow both smaller and more monumental. My name is Emily Marie Ashford, she began, and hearing her voice again. God, hearing her voice was like being stabbed and embraced simultaneously. I'm recording this sworn statement in the presence of Clarence Pemberton, my attorney, and notary public Patricia Wells. I am of sound mind and body. What I'm about to tell you is the truth. The courtroom had gone so quiet I could hear the air conditioning cycling on somewhere in the ceiling. Every juror leaned forward slightly. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, her fingers hovering over the keys. Emily paused on screen, folded her hands on the desk in front of her with that particular careful precision she'd always used when she was about to say something that mattered. I knew that gesture, had seen it 10,000 times across 46 years of marriage. I've been diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer, she continued, and I heard someone behind me, one of the spectators, draw in a sharp breath. My oncologist doctor, Robert Dixon, has given me 2 years at most. He's recommended chemotherapy and possibly surgery, but the estimated cost is between $200,000 and $300,000. I've chosen to refuse treatment. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, like wind through wheat. Judge Hartman raised one hand, not speaking, and the silence returned immediately. But I felt the shift in the room, the confusion at the beginning of understanding. Emily's voice on the recording was steady, clinical almost, but I knew her well enough to hear what was underneath. The grief, the exhaustion, the terrible, lonely courage. I'm refusing treatment because the money I would need to pay for it is currently the only evidence in a criminal case. If I withdraw those funds from the certificate of deposit I opened in April 2017, my son will know I discovered his theft. He'll destroy the remaining evidence, move assets offshore, eliminate any paper trail. There will be no justice. So I'm choosing to die with the evidence intact. Philip made a sound beside Maxwell Grant at the defense table, half gasp, half sob, a noise I'd never heard a human being make before. I didn't look at him. Couldn't. If I looked at him right then, I wasn't sure what I'd do. I want to be very clear about what's happened, Emily said, and the camera angle shifted slightly as someone, probably Clarence, adjusted it. In November 2017, I discovered that my son, Philip Michael Ashford, had been stealing from me. Not small amounts, not a one-time mistake. Not an emergency where he'd borrowed and intended to pay back. Systematic theft over years. He added his name to my bank accounts in 2016, claiming it was for convenience in case I needed help managing finances as I got older. By the time I found out what he was actually doing, he'd taken nearly $800,000. The screen shifted to a spreadsheet that filled the frame, Emily's handwriting in those neat columns she'd learned during her 34 years as a school librarian. dates down the left side. Dollar amounts in the middle, running totals on the right. The numbers climbed and climbed: $22,000, $35,000, $18,500, $41,200. Each entry dated each one representing a moment when my son had looked at his dying mother and decided to steal from her. I opened a certificate of deposit in April 2017. Emily continued as the camera returned to her face, using money from the sale of 2 properties I'd inherited from my mother, a rental duplex in Oak Park and a small commercial building in Folsom. I deposited $2 million and instructed the bank that only I personally, with photo identification in person, could access it. I never told my husband. I never told my son. I knew that if Philip found out this money existed, he'd try to take it. I was right. Her face hardened in a way I'd rarely seen the face she'd made twice in our marriage, both times when someone had hurt a child under her care. Pure, focused anger. In March 2020, he tried. 3 times in 2 weeks, he submitted forged power of attorney documents to Wells Fargo, claiming I was incapacitated by dementia and couldn't manage my affairs. The bank's document verification specialist flagged the signatures as fraudulent. Each time, Russell Jennings called me at the personal number I'd given him. Each time I thanked him and told him not to involve law enforcement yet. Emily leaned forward slightly, her hands still folded, and I saw her wedding ring catch the light, the simple gold band I'd put on her finger in 1979. "I need you to understand something," she said, and her voice dropped lower, more intimate, as if she was speaking directly to each juror individually. "I've been pretending to have dementia since November 2017. I did it to protect the evidence. If my son thought I was losing my mind, he'd believe I couldn't track what he was doing. He'd get sloppy. He'd leave a trail. He'd stop being careful." She reached off screen and lifted something into view, a small velvet box, forest green, worn at the edges. My breath caught. I knew that box. This was my mother's engagement ring. Emily said, opening it to show a simple solitaire diamond, maybe half a carat set in yellow gold. My son sold it on eBay in June 2018 for $4,000. When I asked him about it, pretending to be confused, pretending I thought I'd misplaced it, he told me I must have lost it, that my memory was going. That's when I knew how far he was willing to go. He was comfortable watching me grieve over losing my mother's ring while he pocketed the money. The camera zoomed slightly and I could see tears gathering in Emily's eyes, though her voice stayed firm and clear. "To the jury," she said, looking directly at the camera, which meant looking directly at the 12 people who would decide my son's fate. "My son and his wife stole $1,850,000 from me over 8 years. They isolated me from friends. They forged legal documents. They manipulated bank employees. They are guilty of every charge they're facing. I'm asking you to hold them accountable." She paused, and in that pause I heard her gather herself for what came next. "To my son." Her voice cracked just slightly, the first break in her composure. "Philip, I loved you. God help me, I still love you. I would have helped you if you'd asked. If you'd admitted you'd made mistakes, if you'd tried to make things right, I would have forgiven you. You're my son. But you chose to steal from me while I was dying. You chose to let me die alone, isolated, pretending to lose my mind, rather than risk me discovering the truth. I can't forgive that. I wish I could, but I can't." Tears ran down her cheeks now, but she didn't wipe them away, just let them fall. "To my husband." Her voice steadied again, strengthened with something that sounded like desperate love. "Gregory, by the time you see this, I'll be gone. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I knew you'd try to fix it. You'd try to forgive him because he's our son. You'd sacrifice the evidence, sacrifice justice because you believe in redemption and second chances. It's one of the reasons I love you, but some things are beyond forgiveness. Some betrayals are too deep. Use the money to help other people. Make sure Lily knows her grandmother was brave, even if she was also lonely. And please, my love, live. Don't let this destroy you. Live." The screen went dark. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of breathing, and somewhere behind me, a woman crying softly. Philip had his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Amanda sat perfectly still beside Austin Reed, her face a careful mask. But I saw her whisper something to him, probably already thinking about appeals about how to spin this. Judge Hartman's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "The jury will now deliberate on all 13 counts." They were out for 3 hours and 17 minutes. The first time Lily beat me at chess was on a Sunday afternoon in late December 2025, 8 months and 17 days after Emily died. 6 months and 23 days after the trial ended, and exactly 3 weeks after Lily had learned the basic moves and told me she wanted to play seriously. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the same scarred oak surface where I'd read Emily's notebook, where I'd found the certificate in the trash, where I'd opened that final letter. The winter sunlight came through the window, at a low angle, turning everything gold and amber. Sacramento winters are like that cold mornings that give way to brilliant afternoons that make you forget it's supposed to be the dark season. Lily had been studying the board for nearly 5 minutes, her small fingers hovering over pieces, touching one and then another, thinking through sequences I couldn't quite follow. She'd picked up the game faster than I'd expected. Faster than was normal, really. Emily had been right. She was smart, scary, smart. The kind of intelligence that could either save her or destroy her, depending on how it was nurtured. Finally, she moved her queen into position, a diagonal slide that opened up my king and left me with no viable defense. She looked up at me with those gray-blue eyes she'd inherited from Emily's side of the family and said quietly, "Checkmate, Grandpa." I stared at the board for a moment, double-checking the position, looking for an escape I knew wasn't there. My king was trapped between my own pieces and Lily's queen. Classic back-rank mate. The kind of thing you learn to avoid in your first month of serious play. She'd been playing for 3 weeks. "Well done," I said, reaching across and tipping over my king with one finger in the traditional gesture of resignation. "Your grandmother would be proud." Lily grinned a real full smile that reached her eyes and transformed her whole face. 8 months ago, standing in the El Dorado Hills house while her father was being arrested, I wasn't sure I'd ever see her smile like that again. The night the police came, she'd been so still, so silent, like she'd gone somewhere deep inside herself, where the world couldn't reach her. But slowly, week by week, month by month, she'd been coming back. The nightmares were less frequent now. The therapy with Dr. Patel was helping. And maybe I hoped living with someone who wasn't constantly lying to her was helping too. "Can we play again?" she asked, already resetting the pieces. "After dinner," I said. "We've been playing for 2 hours. Your brain needs fuel." She wrinkled her nose but didn't argue. We'd established routines over the past 6 months, homework before games, vegetables before dessert, lights out by 9 on school nights. Simple rules. Consistent. The kind of structure she'd never had with Philip and Amanda, who'd been too busy stealing and scheming to pay attention to their daughter's bedtime. The Emily Ashford Foundation occupied a small office on J Street, 3 blocks east of the state capitol building, wedged between a tax preparation service and a Vietnamese restaurant that made the best PAO I'd ever tasted. We'd opened officially on December 15th, and within 2 weeks the phone was ringing constantly. Clarence Pemberton had handled the legal incorporation, setting up the non-profit status, filing the paperwork with the IRS, establishing the board of directors. I'd insisted on keeping it small, me, Clarence, Detective Campbell, and Russell Jennings from Wells Fargo. 4 people who'd seen firsthand what financial elder abuse looked like and were committed to stopping it. Marcus Bradford had shown up on December 28th, standing in the doorway of our tiny office with his hands in his pockets, and an expression I recognized the look of someone who needed purpose more than they needed a paycheck. "I owe her," he'd said, not sitting down, not introducing himself beyond his name, even though I knew exactly who he was. "I owe you. Let me help." I'd hired him on the spot. Or not hired exactly, since we couldn't afford to pay anyone yet. But I'd given him a desk, a phone, and access to the database we were building of financial crimes, detectives, elder law attorneys, and victim resources across California. Marcus had a gift for the work. He was patient on the intake calls, never rushing people through their stories. He was careful with documentation, understanding instinctively how important paper trails were. And he was deeply personally familiar with how predators operated, how they built trust, exploited access, isolated victims, and covered their tracks. He knew because Amanda had done all of those things to him. By January, we'd helped 4 families, connecting them with attorneys, walking them through the process of filing police reports, providing emergency funds from the foundation's initial capital so they could change locks or freeze accounts or do whatever immediate damage control was necessary. By February, we'd helped 8 more. By March, the number had climbed to 12, and we'd started getting calls from outside Sacramento, Stockton, Modesto, Fresno, families who had heard about us through lawyers or police departments or just desperate Google searches at 3 in the morning. The foundation provided 3 core services: free legal consultations with elder law attorneys who volunteered their time, direct connections to financial crimes, detectives who actually understood these cases, and emergency funds usually between $500 and $2,000 for people who'd lost everything to a relative's theft and needed immediate help. Marcus worked the intake line Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 5. He was good at it, maybe the best I'd ever seen. He knew how to ask the right questions, when to push for details, and when to just listen. How to document everything without making the victim feel like they were being interrogated. I know this is hard. He'd say, his voice steady and kind over the phone. Take your time, tell me what happened, start wherever feels right. And they would tell him. Stories that made my stomach turn. Children who'd forged their parents' signatures, grandchildren who'd lied about medical emergencies, caregivers who'd systematically drained bank accounts while the elderly victims watched helpless and afraid. Stories that sounded exactly like Emily's. Lily started therapy on January 7th with Dr. Anjali Patel, a child psychologist who specialized in family trauma. Twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons at 4:30, I'd drive Lily across town to Dr. Patel's office in East Sacramento and wait in the small reception area while they talked. Now, I never asked what they discussed. Dr. Patel had been clear. Lily needs to know this space is hers, that what she says here stays here unless there's a safety concern. She needs one place where adults aren't trying to control or manage her story. So, I waited, read magazines I didn't care about, watched other families come and go, and tried not to think about what Lily was saying in that room, what questions she was asking about her father and grandmother, and the night her whole world had shattered. She still had nightmares sometimes. I'd wake at 2 or 3 in the morning to hear her crying softly in the bedroom we'd made for her in Emily's old sewing room. I'd knock gently, wait for permission, then sit on the edge of her bed while she cried or talked or just held onto my hand until the fear passed. I dreamed they came back, she'd whisper. Mom and Dad. They said I had to go home with them. They can't come back, sweetheart. Not for a very long time. How long? And I'd have to tell her again. Your father has 10 years. Your mother has 5. You'll be 18 when your mother gets out. 19 when your father does. Old enough to decide for yourself whether you want to see them. But she was getting better. The nightmares were less frequent, maybe once a week now, instead of every night. She was sleeping through until morning more often. And the therapist said she was making progress, whatever that meant. At school, she was thriving. Straight A's in every subject. Teacher comments on her report cards that used words like exceptional and remarkable and uncommonly mature. She had joined the chess club at her new elementary school and was already beating kids 2 grades ahead of her. She brought her report cards home and taped them to the refrigerator herself, not asking for permission or praise, just claiming the space like she was beginning to understand this was her home now, that she was allowed to be here, that she didn't have to earn it. One evening in late November, nearly 6 months to the day after Judge Hartman had read the sentencing terms, Lily looked up from her math homework and asked, Grandpa Gregory, was Grandma Emily really smart? I was washing dishes, my hands in warm soapy water, and the question caught me off guard. We didn't talk about Emily often, not because I didn't want to, but because I never knew how much Lily remembered how much she understood about what had really happened. I dried my hands on a towel and sat down across from her at the table. The smartest person I ever knew, I said honestly. Smarter than you. I smiled. Much smarter. Lily tilted her head, considering this with that serious expression she got when she was processing something important. I wish I could have known her better. My throat tightened. Lily had only met Emily twice, once at a Christmas gathering when she was 5, once at the funeral when she was 8. 2 brief encounters with the grandmother who'd been documenting her son's crimes instead of spending time with her granddaughter. I reached into the drawer where I kept Emily's letter, the final one, the one she'd left with Clarence. I'd read it so many times over the past 6 months that the creases were starting to wear thin, the ink fading at the fold lines. Your grandma left something for you, I said. She asked me to tell you that she loved you even from far away. She said you're the hope that grows after the pain. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just sat there 9 years old, holding on to those words like they were precious. And she asked me to teach you something, I continued. What? How to play chess. She said you're smart like me. She said you'd love it. Lily looked at me for a long moment, those gray-blue eyes searching my face for something reassurance maybe, or permission to love a grandmother she'd barely known. Then she smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. Yes, she said, I want to learn. The first snowfall came to Sacramento on January 8, 2026. Rare for our city. The kind of event that made the news and brought neighbors out onto their porches to watch the fat white flakes drift down through the valley air. Lily pressed her face against the kitchen window, breath fogging the glass, and said, "Grandpa, do you think Grandma can see this?" I was making breakfast scrambled eggs and toast, the simple things I'd learned to cook, well over the past 9 months of being a single parent to a 9-year-old girl. I turned off the stove and came to stand beside her, looking out at Capitol Avenue as it transformed into something magical and temporary. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said honestly, "but I like to think she can." Lily was quiet for a moment, then, "I think she'd like the snow. She liked beautiful things that didn't last very long." The wisdom in that statement from a child who'd just turned 9 2 weeks earlier took my breath away. Emily had liked ephemeral beauty, cherry blossoms in spring, sunsets, the way light moved across water, things that were gorgeous precisely because they were fleeting. "You're right," I said. "She would have loved this." We stood there together, watching Sacramento turn white, and I thought about how far we'd come since that April afternoon when Philip had thrown a cream-colored certificate in the trash and I'd pulled it out, not knowing I was about to uncover 8 years of lies. 9 months. That's how long it had been since Emily died. 9 months since the funeral where Philip had stood beside me, dry-eyed and checking his phone. 9 months since I discovered that my son was a thief and my wife had been a warrior, and nothing in my life was what I'd thought it was. The Emily Ashford Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What had started as a small office on J Street with Marcus Bradford answering phones and me stumbling through paperwork had become something real, something that mattered. We'd helped 47 families by Christmas. By New Year's, that number had climbed to 63. Marcus had hired 2 more volunteers, both retired banking professionals who'd seen financial elder abuse from the inside and wanted to fight it. Together, they'd developed a training program for bank tellers, teaching them how to recognize the warning signs elderly customers suddenly accompanied by family members at every transaction. Confusion about large withdrawals, they didn't remember authorizing subtle signs of coercion or fear. Russell Jennings had helped us pilot the program at Wells Fargo branches across Sacramento County. Within 3 months, they'd flagged and prevented 17 suspected cases of elder financial abuse. 17 families who didn't have to go through what we'd gone through. Detective Campbell had become something like a friend, an unlikely development given that we'd met under the worst possible circumstances. He called every 2 weeks or so, ostensibly to update me on cases where the Foundation's referrals had led to arrests and prosecutions. But really, I thought he called to check on me, to make sure I was okay, that Lily was okay, that we were surviving this thing that should have destroyed us. 63 families, he'd said during his last call 3 days before the snow. That's 63 fewer people suffering what Emily suffered. You're doing her work, Mr. Ashford. Never doubt that. But I did doubt it sometimes. Late at night after Lily had gone to sleep, and I was alone with Emily's photograph and my own thoughts. I wondered if I was honoring her sacrifice or just trying to build something beautiful on top of something broken. If the foundation was justice or just elaborate grief management, then morning would come. Lily would wake up and ask what was for breakfast. Marcus would call with another family who needed help. And I'd remember what Emily had written in that final letter, use the money to help others. There are so many people out there like me alone, afraid, unsure who to trust. Help them. So I did. We did. Lily had stopped having nightmares in December. Dr. Patel said it was a significant milestone, not that the trauma was gone, but that Lily was learning to process it, to integrate it into her story, without letting it consume her. She still saw a doctor. Patel twice a week still had hard days when questions about her parents would surface, and I'd have no good answers. But she was healing, slowly, unevenly, but genuinely. She'd made friends at her new school, real friends, not the carefully managed playdate arrangements that Philip and Amanda had orchestrated. She brought them home sometimes, and I'd hear them in her room playing games or doing homework or just talking the way 9-year-old girls talk, full of laughter and secrets and the easy intimacy of childhood. She'd joined the school chess club and was already their second-ranked player. The coach, a volunteer dad named Robert Chen, had pulled me aside after practice 2 weeks ago and said, "Your granddaughter has genuine talent. Have you thought about getting her into competitive play?" I hadn't, but I'd promised to think about it. Emily would have wanted Lily to develop her gifts whatever they turned out to be. The 3 letters from Philip still sat in the drawer unopened. I'd thought about reading them, especially during those long nights when guilt kept me awake. My son was in federal prison serving 10 years because I'd given Detective Campbell the evidence, because I'd chosen justice over mercy, because I'd finished what Emily started. Some days I was sure I'd made the right choice. Other days I wasn't sure at all. Amanda's appeal had been denied in November, and her lawyer had filed for early release based on good behavior. The hearing was scheduled for March. Detective Campbell said it would almost certainly be denied. She'd only served 9 months of a 5-year sentence. But the fact that she'd tried said everything about who Amanda was. Even in prison, she was still scheming, still looking for angles, still believing the rules didn't apply to her. On January 15th, exactly 9 months since the trial ended, the Foundation held its second public event. We called it Coffee and Conversations: Protecting Your Elderly Parents from Financial Abuse. Clarence had suggested the title. Marcus had organized the logistics. I'd invited speakers Detective Campbell Russell Jennings, an elder law attorney named Patricia Wong, and after much hesitation, I'd agreed to speak myself. 78 people showed up. We'd been expecting maybe 30. They filled the community room at the J Street Library, sitting in folding chairs, standing along the walls when the seats ran out. Old and young, wealthy and working-class people from every part of Sacramento who had either experienced financial elder abuse themselves or were terrified it would happen to them. I spoke last after the experts had explained the legal frameworks and warning signs and prevention strategies. I hadn't prepared remarks, hadn't written anything down. I just stood up there 71 years old, looking at 78 people who were looking back at me with hope and fear and desperate need for answers. My wife died 8 months ago. I began, and my voice only shook a little. She died of pancreatic cancer that she could have treated if she'd used the money our son was stealing from her. But she didn't. She let herself die so the evidence would survive. So, there would be justice. I told them about the certificate in the trash, about Emily's notebook, about the 8 years she'd pretended to lose her mind while documenting every theft, every lie, every betrayal. I'm not standing here to tell you what Emily did was right, I said. I honestly don't know if it was. She sacrificed everything: her health, her dignity, her final years, with me for justice. That's not a choice anyone should have to make. I paused, looking out at faces wet with tears. But I'm standing here to tell you that if you suspect financial abuse, you need to act. Document everything. Contact the police. Call us, we'll help you. Don't wait. Don't hope it will get better. Don't let love blind you to theft. After the event, 17 people came up to talk to me privately. 7 of them suspected ongoing abuse. Marcus took their information, started intake files, connected them with resources. 2 months later, 4 of those cases would result in arrests. That night, driving home with Lily in the passenger seat, she had attended the event sitting quietly in the back row, listening to her grandfather talk about her grandmother's death. She asked, "Do you think justice was worth it?" I was stopped at a red light on J Street, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement when she asked. I looked over at her, small and serious, her hands folded in her lap, the way Emily used to fold hers when she was thinking hard about something. "I think justice is all we have sometimes," I said carefully. "When love fails, when trust breaks, justice is what's left." But Grandma died for it. She did. Was it worth it? The light turned green. I drove through the intersection, buying time to think about how to answer a 9-year-old's impossible question. "Your grandmother believed some things matter more than life," I finally said. "She believed the truth matters, that right and wrong aren't negotiable, that people who hurt others should face consequences even if those people are family." I glanced at Lily. She was listening, really listening. Was she right? I don't know. I miss her every single day. I wish she'd chosen treatment, chosen more time with me, chosen to let someone else handle justice. But she didn't. And now 63 families have been helped because of the foundation she made possible. 17 cases of abuse have been prevented. That has to count for something. Lily was quiet until we pulled into our parking spot at the apartment. "I think it counts for a lot," she said softly. "I think Grandma was brave." She was, I agreed, terrifyingly brave. We walked upstairs together, and that night before bed, Lily asked if we could play one more game of chess. We set up the board at the kitchen table, the same table where Emily had hidden her secrets, where I'd discovered her truths, and played in comfortable silence. Lily won again. She was beating me more often than not now. "Grandma's watching," she said as she put the pieces away. "I can feel it sometimes." "Me too, sweetheart, me too." Later, alone in the quiet apartment, I pulled out Emily's photograph, the one from our 40th anniversary, and studied her face. The smile lines around her eyes, the intelligence and mischief and deep, fierce love. "We're okay," I whispered to the photograph. "Lily's healing. The foundation is growing. We're doing the work you started. I hope that's enough. I hope you're proud." In the winter darkness, I thought I heard her voice soft and certain. "It's enough. You're enough. Keep going." So I did. If you've walked this entire journey with me, through Emily's quiet sacrifice, through Philip's devastating family betrayal, through 9 months of learning to live with choices that can never be unmade, thank you from the depths of my 71-year-old heart. Your presence here matters more than you know. Now, let me be brutally honest with you. Don't be like me. Don't ignore the warning signs that God places right in front of your eyes. Don't let love make you blind to the theft happening in your own home. I spent 46 years married to the most intelligent, courageous woman I ever knew. Yet, in her final years, when she needed me most, I failed her completely. I trusted when I should have verified. I believed when I should have questioned. For 8 long years, Emily fought a silent war documenting every theft, pretending to lose her mind, dying by inches, while I remained utterly, shamefully oblivious. God gave me eyes, but I refused to see. God gave me instincts, but I dismissed them as paranoia or negativity. When your gut tells you something's wrong with how a family member is handling an elderly parent's finances, listen, that's God speaking through your conscience. Don't silence that voice the way I did. Don't wait until you're standing in a bank conference room, staring at evidence of 8 years of theft, to finally acknowledge what some part of you knew all along. Here's what I've learned through the most devastating experience of my life. Family betrayal is real. It's common, and it destroys more lives than we want to admit. Family doesn't guarantee honesty. Blood doesn't equal trustworthiness. Love and theft can coexist in the same person I know, because I raised that person, loved him, and still struggle daily with the weight of what he became. If you're caring for elderly parents, check their bank accounts every single month. Ask uncomfortable questions. Demand transparency even when it feels awkward or accusatory. Don't assume your siblings or your own children have pure intentions just because they're family. This isn't about being suspicious or cynical. It's about being wise. It's about protecting the vulnerable people who gave you life. Financial elder abuse destroys families every day in America. This family story I've shared with you isn't unique, it's epidemic. The Federal Trade Commission reports that financial exploitation of the elderly costs Americans over $28 billion annually. But those are just numbers. Behind each statistic is a Emily, someone who died alone, afraid, robbed of dignity by the people who should have protected them. Emily sacrificed her final years. She refused cancer treatment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to preserve evidence of our son's crimes. She died alone in our apartment while I was at the grocery store, having spent her last conscious moments making sure the truth would survive, even if she didn't. That's my burden to carry forever. Not just that she died, but that she died that way, lonely, scared, pretending to be someone she wasn't, so justice could eventually be served. My perspective after everything, some betrayals cut so deep that earthly forgiveness becomes impossible. We must leave that judgment to God in His perfect wisdom. I don't know if I'll ever forgive Philip. Some days I think I should try. Other days I remember Emily's face in that video, recording tears streaming down her cheeks as she said, "I can't forgive that, and I understand why." Perhaps forgiveness isn't always the goal. Perhaps sometimes justice and boundaries and protecting others matter more than reconciliation. But here's what I do know. We can still choose justice here on earth while trusting God's ultimate judgment in heaven. We can protect others from suffering the same fate. That's exactly why the Emily Ashford Foundation exists, to turn Emily's pain into purpose, to make sure her death meant something beyond just convicting 2 people. So, I'm genuinely asking you, have you noticed warning signs in your own family? Elderly parents suddenly forgetful about money, adult children who seem overly involved in managing finances, unexplained withdrawals or changes to bank accounts. Do you regularly check on your aging parents' financial accounts, or do you assume everything's fine because family wouldn't hurt? Family. If you were in my position, if you discovered your own child had been stealing from your dying spouse, what would you have done differently? Would you have had the courage to prosecute? Would you have chosen justice over the illusion of family peace? These aren't rhetorical questions. I genuinely want to know because I still wake up at 3 in the morning wondering if I made the right choices, if Emily's sacrifice was worth it, If 63 families helped by the foundation somehow balances the scales against my son serving 10 years in federal prison and my granddaughter growing up without parents. I don't have those answers. Maybe you do. Here's what I'm asking you to do right now. If this family story moved you or opened your eyes to dangers you hadn't considered, please share it. Forward it to your siblings. Send it to adult children who help manage their parents' finances. Post it where people who need this warning might see it. Someone in your circle desperately needs to hear this before it's too late for their family. Every family story like ours that gets shared becomes a warning beacon for others navigating the treacherous waters of elder care and financial responsibility. Your willingness to share this painful narrative could be the difference between someone catching theft early and someone discovering it only after their loved one has died protecting evidence. Don't let shame or discomfort stop you from potentially saving another family from this devastating family betrayal. Subscribe to this channel for more real-world lessons delivered through powerful storytelling stories that hurt because they're rooted in patterns we see every day. Stories that challenge us to be better, more vigilant, more honest about the darkness that can exist even in families we love. Each family story we examine together becomes armor against the manipulation and theft that destroys thousands of families annually. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's one thing you'll do differently after hearing Emily's story? Will you check your parents' bank accounts this week? Will you have that uncomfortable conversation with your siblings about financial transparency? Will you trust your instincts when something feels wrong? Let me see your commitments in the comments, not just a number, but real words about real changes you'll make. Your voice matters. Your vigilance could save a family. Share your own experiences. If you've witnessed family betrayal in financial matters, your story might be the validation someone else desperately needs to take action. I'm deeply grateful you stayed until the very end. Grateful you witnessed Emily's courage. Grateful you're still here, thinking about these hard truths, willing to face uncomfortable realities about how financial abuse can devastate even the strongest people. One final transparency. This account blends documented patterns of elder financial abuse with reimagined narrative elements designed for educational impact and emotional resonance. The characters are composites. The specific details are crafted for storytelling purposes. But the warning is absolutely urgent and grounded in real cases I've encountered through 9 months of running the foundation. If pure documentary format is what you require, this content may not align with your preferences, and I respect that. Different narratives serve different audiences, and you're welcome to seek content that better fits your needs. Because here's my truth after 71 years of life and 9 months of learning to live without Emily. Truth matters, especially when it hurts. Justice matters even when it costs everything. And sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to look away from the darkness, even when that darkness wears a familiar face and calls us Dad. Thank you for walking this journey with me. Now go protect your family from threats outside and within. May God give you the wisdom to see clearly, the courage to act decisively, and the strength to choose what's right over what's comfortable.